aren't we really looking for X and Y? It's another thing to go, wait a minute, does that make sense?
I think that critical thinking is probably going to be the most in-demand skill of the next 50 years.
Hi, Emma. I'm so excited to be interviewing with you today.
So my name is Emma Wiles. I'm an assistant professor at Boston University's Questrom School of Business. My background is studying how AI impacts labor markets, sort of generally, but hiring specifically. So that's probably what I study the most.
Great. Well, let's just get started. So it seems like every day the AI landscape changes. We all have to take a deep breath on that. What is your take on where things are headed?
Yeah, so I mean, it's a very exciting time to be alive and to be, like a labor economist as well. I think one of the really interesting things that we're seeing with all of these new advances in AI is that there are extremely large uh, productivity gains that are going to individuals, that we can see people are becoming individually more productive when they use AI tools. This is sort of something that will then think, oh, great, the economy must be growing, the productivity stats must be shooting up, organizations must be getting more productive. And actually, it really seems like that's not happening. The productivity numbers are not really following along these sort of individual increases in productivity. And so I think one really open question is kind of why that's happening. And my best sense of why it's happening and where it's going is that, for example, when the internet proliferated for, 20 years, there was no evidence of productivity increases from the internet. And then once it got integrated into organizations, then all of a sudden you see huge productivity increases. And there's the same thing happened with like electricity. It takes a while for individual level productivity to turn into kind of organizational or society-wide productivity. So that's kind of what I am waiting for in the next kind of 10 years or so, is to start seeing these kind of big productivity impacts at the micro level become more macro. Um, I think one thing that I also am thinking a lot about is how these changes to white collar work are going to impact like inequality. And there are a couple different things that we could see, but my best guess is that as AI tools become really good and now better than experts on a lot of things, the thing we've seen some evidence of is that there could be this like leveling effect. So I think that's the sort of like vision of the future that I have that's at least a kind of optimistic one moving forward.
How do you see AI impacting the future of work?
In so many different ways. I think one important way to think about work and jobs is everyone is thinking about automation because AI is so good at these various tasks. But I think an important thing to remember is that, AI can do tasks, AI can't do jobs. And so if we think about how AI is going to impact jobs generally, it is going to replace some tasks that people do. It is going to transform or augment some tasks. It's going to create more tasks that we don't already do. So maybe one way to think about this is like in 2018, 60% of the US workforce was in a job that didn't exist in 1940. And so while we're thinking about how much work is changing and how tools are now able to do a lot of work for us, there's a tremendous amount of work that we just can't even conceptualize yet because those jobs haven't been created yet.
I agree with you. And actually, if you think about it, the whole topic and category of product management didn't exist. It wasn't a career.
Yeah.
You didn't even have it as a category or a name. And then, with the advent of technology that's embedded in everything we do, product management has been that glue between, what's needed by users and what technology can do. And so I feel like we're just on the cutting edge or cusp of the next
Yes.
revolution
Yes,
where we have to
exactly.
take ourselves and think of ourselves differently and play to our strengths and let the technology do what it does best.
Yeah, and try to kind of prepare ourselves for a labor market that is going to be demanding skills that don't exist yet. So I
Exactly.
think that's a really tough thing, but one thing that everyone can do is to try to have, as opposed to I am going to learn this one specific skill that's going to make me hireable, to become good at learning new skills. That's, I think, the biggest thing you can do as like a job seeker right now is show that you are able to quickly learn new skills because those skills are going to be changing so fast, faster than anything we've seen before.
But I do feel though that there are skills that are core to being human,
Mm.
that creativity. Sometimes, the AI tools are set up that they're like solving for all the data into one into
Mm.
one answer, but that doesn't leave room for the human mind to connect the dots differently and come up with new answers, different answers, new approaches. And so I think there are core skills like creativity and critical thinking
Critical
skills. It's one
thinking
thing to
is,
have things spit out. It's another thing to go, wait a minute, does that make sense? And aren't we really looking for X and Y?
I think that critical thinking is probably going to be the most in-demand skill of the next 50 years. I think figuring out who is able to look at probably AI generated content and figure out what is good, what is useful. Is this the point? Sometimes an AI tool will just, it'll write something. It's very good at being persuasive, but it has no idea what matters. And so that being that kind of overseer of AI tools and knowing when it's good, when it's right, and what to do with it next is, I think, going to be like the big basket of critical skills.
I love that. I love that. Okay, so another thought and question for you. So you've done a lot of research around framing AI as a teammate or a colleague or somebody that's sitting right next to you, or actually, on the org chart. So, if you think about it that way, it's like, your favorite best friend who's helping you. Um, how does that change the way people think about interacting with this technology every day? Is that a good thing? What does it do? Talk a little bit about that.
Yeah. Yeah. So a lot of companies have started sort of humanizing AI agents. AI agents are distinct from something like a chatbot in that they can make choices and take actions on their own. So an AI agent, is not, you're not just saying, oh, I'm going to ask a question and get an answer and I'll run it by. It's like an AI agent is going to file your taxes for you. So these AI agents are sometimes companies are building them into their workflows, into their organizational work processes. And while I don't know what per se whether it's good or bad, it definitely changes the way other employees interact with them. And so I think something that organizations need to be thinking a lot about right now is if this concept of overseeing work is now an extremely valuable skill. Are you able to judge output and see if it's right and like take it seriously? And what you really need to do is you need to be able to judge whether AI generated output is correct and good to go. And when you frame AI as a teammate or an employee, what we found in an experiment with a bunch of senior managers is that they do a lot less detailed oversight than if you say, this is your tool. And so, a thing that you want to be careful of when you're
Mm.
integrating AI agents into your work processes, any place that humans are in the loop, is that sort of formalizing of the AI agent and personifying of it is going to give it credibility that's going to make the other workers think that it's basically trustworthy. And so that is going to risk then possibly less detailed oversight.
It's super interesting because if you think about it, humanizing the technology maybe brings the barriers down so that the person can
Yes.
feel more comfortable using it. But if they name it as, my buddy John, who's helping,
Yeah.
um, then John has a persona, and then you don't want to criticize John because suddenly it's almost like a person. Maybe that the critical thinking piece of it drops down a bit. And That's interesting. So it's kind of like weighing the humanizing parts. You're not intimidating with the fact that, wait, this is a tool, you're driving it, you need to be overseeing what's going on.
Yeah,
Super
exactly.
interesting. All right. So now we're going to ask you another question. I know you did so much time on that research, but we're going to move on. Uh, One thing that I wanted to ask you is where are organizations right now getting it wrong? Because everybody's learning and doing, and everybody's really kind of put the pedal to the metal in how do I do this quickly? So, what are
Mhm.
you seeing out there, and what could organizations do better?
Yeah, so one thing organizations can do better, I think people are trying to move really fast. And so some organizations will say things like they'll require their employees do trainings to use AI, or they tell their employees, we're going to ask you if you used AI, and if you say no, we're going to penalize you. And I think the kind of idea of just throwing AI at a workforce is not enough. Um, when you're adopting AI in an organization, you want to think about how you do that as a governance choice. So, for example, if you're going to adopt a bunch of AI agents into your work processes, whether or not you think about them as employees or not, you want to pair each AI agent with a manager. That manager has to is in charge and owns whatever output comes out of the AI agent. If the AI agent makes a mistake, that's on the manager. The fact that the manager has to be accountable for that work needs to be made salient to them repeatedly because they'll forget. And so really making it very clear kind of who owns what output when AI is in the mix. I think also having, formal practices and like formal policies about who is responsible for um, what decisions are AI allowed to make on their own, what decisions are going to be squarely, in the realm of the human employees. And these should all be like very intentional sort of choices.
Based on all the work that you've done, what changes in how people and jobs connect with AI might leaders be overlooking?
Yeah, this is a really important question. I think one thing that we worry about is skill atrophy. So a lot of AI tools will make you more productive in the short run. And if you want, this presentation made or this data set cleaned, definitely the fastest way to do that is to have AI help you. But then you later go back and try to do something like that again. And if you maybe don't have AI, you realize, oh, I actually have forgotten how to do this. There was an interesting study that studied an accounting firm that showed that when they integrated this automation tool, for a few years, when they eventually retired the tool, they discovered that basically their accountants could no longer do fixed asset accounting. It was just like done. They had no idea how to do it anymore. So that is a long-term problem because eventually either the technology will glitch, or even if it doesn't glitch, like you need to provide oversight of it. And if you don't understand the details of it, it's really hard to provide oversight of something that you don't understand. So making sure that workers are gaining and keeping skills is, I think, that like a very big question that organizations may not be focused on right now as they're focusing on these like short-term productivity gains.
As AI becomes a bigger part of recruiting, and I know you spent a lot of time in research on this, where do you see it really improving the experience for both companies and candidates?
I think that AI has both the potential and already started to improve and ruin the experience of the hiring process. Probably on the downside, a lot of times we are seeing there's a huge uptick in AI written applications, AI written cover letters. That makes it a lot harder for companies to figure out what candidates are actually good. To the extent that writing quality is an indicator of your underlying abilities, that's gone now. So that makes it harder for employers. On the other hand, there are sort of AI written cover job posts. Workers are then trying to apply for jobs that have basically no substance to them, and then they can't find jobs they'd be a good fit for. And so what you have is like sort of garbage on both sides of the market. You've got AI slop on both sides, and that's giving us a pretty bad equilibrium in hiring markets. Now, the saving grace of AI here is that AI as an sort of an intermediary between those two things has shown evidence of being quite good. So, for example, there's evidence that AI interviewers, if you go through an AI interview instead of a human interview, you are much more likely to get the job if you were interviewed by the AI, because the AI interviewer is much more, consistent about getting all of your sort of as much information as it can about your underlying abilities, and then you're more likely to get the job. Not only are you more likely to get the job, you're more likely to stay in the job longer because you're probably a better fit for the job. So
I saw
there's
that research and that was really amazing.
at some point after the interview, it goes back to the human recruiter, and then the human does the actual hiring. So the AI isn't picking who to hire, they're just extracting information,
Yeah,
a
and
story of
again, it
success.
goes back to humans being in the loop, doing different things. And
Yeah,
so, what you're talking about with an AI tool in recruiting, it's really that initial screening interview
yeah.
that can get more consistently the strengths and the skills of that individual across many different people, so that then the hiring manager can be reviewing that information and more effectively responding on more consistent information. That to me sounds like a win-win.
Yeah, and another upside of this for workers was that, or applicants, was that in this experiment, they give you for one group, they gave them a choice of, do you want to have the AI screener or do you want to have the human interviewer? And like almost 80% picked the AI interviewer. And the ones who picked the AI interviewer said that they felt like less judged, they felt less stressed because they're being interviewed by a robot. And so, that the improvement isn't just for sort of firms, it also can make candidates feel better about the interview process while also extracting more information. So I think AI interviewing has been, a huge win in sort of how AI is impacting HR,
Yeah.
whereas anything where AI is generating text is generally has not been good.
Yeah, no, that's great. So you've been so kind to share your insights with us today, Emma. One last question for you, and that is about workers and job seekers. How should they, and we all be thinking about AI? What are the skills that we should really be focusing on and working to develop, in addition to just learning how to use the tools?
So what I would focus on as someone entering the labor market is I would think about using AI in a way that makes my skills more powerful. I would be very careful about using AI instead of doing something. And instead, I would try to use AI to make what I'm already doing better. So, anytime you're thinking about using AI, for example, when I was preparing for this interview, I could have taken these questions and asked AI, write answers for me. That would take there, you don't need a professor then. If you could just do that yourself. I then have automated myself away and am no longer useful. Instead, what I did is and that sounded great, but instead, what I did the hard thing and I said, I gave Claude, I told Claude who I was and I said, interview me. And then I had to answer the questions myself. And that's harder, but that keeps your skills from atrophying. And you can use these AI tools, you can use them as in the Socratic method, you can use them to help you get better and you become more valuable to an employer. And so any way in which you feel like AI is making your life easier, I would almost caution. And if you think it's making, your work better, but you're putting in just as much effort as you would before, then that's the sweet spot.
There was something that I learned recently, Emma, at the MIT conference that I met you at, about cognitive offloading. That,
Mhm.
AI is this great opportunity to say, I can just let the AI do that, and I can let the AI do that. And it's almost like, I think the analogy was a GPS, right?
Yep.
You used to have to know where to go, read the map, figure out where you were going. And now you just put in the address. You don't even have to think about it. And you can just follow the little
Yep.
line and prompts to tell you where you're going. So I do believe that that leads to some atrophy in your brain, because then you don't have to do that.
Yep.
If, on the other hand, you're not doing some rote things and you're able to free your brain up to do more cerebral things, which I think is the ability and promise of AI, then I think we're all winners. Well, this was awesome. Thank you so much, Emma. Are you working on some new research that I will be excited to learn about for a year or two from now?
Sure. What am I working on right now? Right now, I'm working on a couple of things. On the hiring front, I am working on some research about whether the sort of increase in applications that we're seeing at firms because of the sort of AI written cover letters and applications, if firms are responding to that, how they're changing their evaluation practices. They're not, reading 10,000 job applications for an entry-level job. So what are they going to rely on instead? Are they going to rely on prestige of university? Are they going to rely on whether or not you were an internal hire? Is it going to be more nepotistic? It came from a referral from someone you already knew. And so you're like, okay, let's avoid all of these AI generated cover letters. I'm going to hire my employee's friend. There's a bunch of ways it's impacting the way hiring is
So that
changing, and
sounds super interesting. I
trying to
can't
study
wait to
that.
hear
Yeah,
about how that all goes and the insights then. So
I
thank you
love to.
so much, Emma.
Thank you.